Jack Trice, American football. On October 6, 1923, Jack Trice took the field as Iowa State's starting defensive tackle. He stood 6 feet tall and weighed 200 pounds. Early in the game, he sustained an injury to his shoulder during a collision, but he kept playing. In the third quarter, Jack attempted a rolling block on an offensive play. He landed on his back. Several Minnesota players trampled over him. Their cleats tore into his abdomen and chest. The weight crushed down on his internal organs. Jack could not get up. His teammates helped him off the field. Team doctors examined him briefly on the sideline. They saw the shoulder injury, but missed everything else happening inside his body. After the game, Jack was taken to a Minneapolis hospital for evaluation. Doctors cleared him to travel. They told him to rest. The team boarded the train back to Ames that evening. Jack lay on a makeshift straw mattress in a railroad car. The train rocked and swayed through the night. Nobody realized he was dying. The overnight journey was rough. Trice began having trouble breathing. When the train arrived in Ames on Sunday at 1 a.m., he was immediately taken to the campus hospital. His condition worsened throughout the day. Doctors discovered his injuries were far more severe than initially thought. His collarbone was broken. His abdomen and intestines were so severely damaged that surgery was too dangerous to attempt. Internal bleeding was spreading through his body. On Monday afternoon, October 8, 1923, around 3 o'clock, Jack Trice died from internal bleeding due to severe abdominal injuries. Lane Frost, bull riding. On July 30, 1989, Lane Frost walked through the gates at Cheyenne Frontier Days in Wyoming. He was 25 years old and one of professional rodeo's brightest stars. He had won the world championship in 1987, and people recognized him wherever he went. That afternoon, the draw assigned him a bull named Taken Care of Business. The bull had a reputation among riders: big, strong, unpredictable. But Frost had ridden tougher bulls before. Behind the chute, Frost prepared his equipment. He wrapped his hand in rosin. He adjusted his rope while other cowboys wished him luck. The crowd noise grew louder as his ride approached. The gate opened and Taken Care of Business exploded into the arena. The bull bucked and spun. Frost's body moved with the bull's rhythm. Riders need to last 8 seconds on the bull. The clock ticked down and the buzzer sounded. Frost had made a successful 85-point ride. He dismounted and landed on his feet in the dirt. The ride was over. The bullfighters were moving in to distract the animal. That was when something unexpected happened. Taken Care of Business turned back toward Frost. Normally, bulls are expected to run away after a dismount, but this one came back. It lowered its head and drove its horn forward. The horn struck Frost in the back with tremendous force. It penetrated his body and tore through his internal organs. The impact lifted him off his feet and threw him forward into the mud. Bullfighters rushed between Frost and the bull. They waved their arms and shouted to draw the animal away. Medical personnel ran into the arena. Frost lay face down in the dirt. He was not moving. The paramedics turned him over, but his face was covered in mud. He was not breathing. Lane Frost was rushed to the hospital, but was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. The horn had caused massive internal hemorrhaging. Phillip Hughes, cricket. On November 25, 2014, Phillip Hughes arrived at Sydney Cricket Ground for a domestic Sheffield Shield match. Hughes was 25 years old when he played for South Australia against New South Wales. He was also a member of Australia's national team. This was supposed to be routine, just another domestic match. A few moments later, the New South Wales bowler Sean Abbott began his run-up. He released the ball. It was a bouncer designed to rise toward the batsman's chest and head area. Hughes read the delivery and decided to play a pull shot. He tried to hit the ball to the leg side, but he misjudged the bounce slightly. Instead of the ball arriving at chest height where he expected it, the ball rose higher. The ball struck the left side of Hughes's neck just below his helmet, rupturing his vertebral artery. The spot was unprotected. It was at the base of his skull, where the neck connects to the head. Hughes collapsed immediately. The ball had struck him in what medical experts call a kill zone. Paramedics worked on Hughes at the scene, but his brain was bleeding. He was later transported to St. Vincent's Hospital in nearby Darlinghurst. Surgeons operated to relieve pressure on his brain, but the bleeding would not stop. He died on November 27th, 2 days after being struck and 3 days before his 26th birthday. Hank Gathers, basketball. On March 4, 1990, Hank Gathers jogged onto the court at Gershon Pavilion in Los Angeles. Loyola Marymount was hosting Portland in a West Coast Conference tournament game. The crowd was loud. The atmosphere was electric. Gathers was 23 years old and one of college basketball's most dominant players. Then, the game tipped off. Loyola Marymount played at a frantic pace. They ran constantly, fast breaks, full court pressure, up and down. Gathers thrived in this system. He scored. He rebounded. He dominated. Early in the first half, teammate Terrell Lowry threw an alley-oop pass toward the basket. Gathers rose up and caught it. He threw down a powerful dunk. The crowd roared. Gathers landed and began jogging back on defense. That was when his legs gave out. He fell forward onto the court. His body went limp. Teammates thought he was joking at first. Gathers sometimes clowned around, but this time was different. He was not moving. Coaches ran onto the court. Medical staff rushed over, but Gathers had become unconscious. They began CPR immediately before paramedics arrived and took over. Paramedics worked to revive him before transporting him to Marina del Rey Hospital, where he was pronounced dead less than an hour later. The cause was hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. His heart muscle had grown abnormally thick. The condition restricted blood flow and caused fatal arrhythmia. The game was never finished. Ayrton Senna, Formula One. On May 1, 1994, Ayrton Senna climbed into his Williams Renault FW16 for the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola, Italy. He was 34 years old and a three-time Formula One world champion. Senna was considered one of the greatest drivers in racing history. The weekend had already been marred by tragedy. On Friday, driver Rubens Barrichello crashed heavily during practice. On Saturday, Austrian driver Roland Ratzenberger died after a crash during qualifying. Senna was deeply affected by Ratzenberger's death. He visited the crash site that evening and spoke with race officials about safety. He questioned whether racing should continue, but the decision was made. The Grand Prix would proceed. Then came the race day with a heavy atmosphere. The start was chaotic. Multiple crashes on the first lap brought out the safety car. When racing resumed on lap 5, Senna led the field. On lap 7, he approached the Tamburello corner at approximately 192 miles per hour. But something doesn't feel right. Senna's car failed to turn. It continued straight off the track. He tried to brake. The car slowed to approximately 135 miles per hour before striking a concrete wall. The impact was violent. The car's right front wheel and suspension were torn off. One end of the suspension penetrated the cockpit and struck Senna in the helmet with devastating force. The race was stopped immediately. Medical personnel extracted Senna from the wreckage, but he was already unconscious and not breathing on his own. A medical helicopter transported him to Maggiore Hospital in Bologna. Doctors worked frantically, but Senna's injuries were too severe. He had sustained a fatal skull fracture and massive brain trauma. Ayrton Senna was pronounced dead at 6:40 p.m. Benny Kid Paret, boxing. On March 24, 1962, Benny Paret climbed into the ring at Madison Square Garden in New York. He was defending his welterweight title against Emil Griffith. This was their third fight. Each man had won once. The rivalry had turned bitter after Paret called Griffith a derogatory slur at the weigh-in. The fight began with both men trading punches, but by round 12, Paret was exhausted. Griffith, seeing an opportunity, trapped Paret against the ropes in a neutral corner. He unleashed a rapid barrage of over 24 punches in seconds. Paret's head snapped back with each blow. His arms dropped and his legs buckled, but the ropes kept him upright. Griffith kept punching. The referee finally stepped in and stopped the fight. Paret collapsed unconscious. He was carried from the ring on a stretcher. An ambulance rushed him to Roosevelt Hospital. Surgeons operated to relieve pressure, but the damage was too severe. Benny Paret never regained consciousness. He remained in a coma for 10 days. On April 3, 1962, he died from a massive brain hemorrhage. Nodar Kumaritashvili, Luge. On February 12, 2010, Nodar Kumaritashvili prepared for his final training run at the Whistler Sliding Center in British Columbia, Canada. The 2010 Winter Olympics opening ceremony was scheduled for that evening. The world's media was gathered. Athletes from every nation were preparing. Kumaritashvili was 21 years old from the country of Georgia. He competed in luge, one of the most dangerous sports in the Winter Olympics. Riders lie on their backs on a small sled and slide down an icy track at speeds exceed 90 miles per hour. There is no braking, no steering wheel, just subtle body movements to guide the sled. The Whistler track was the fastest luge track ever built. It featured 16 turns and dropped 499 feet over nearly a mile of ice. Multiple athletes had crashed during training in the days before. Several had expressed concerns, but Olympic officials said the track was safe. Around 10:50 a.m., Kumaritashvili pushed off and began his run. His sled accelerated down the ice. Turn after turn passed. His speed increased with each section. By turn 16, he was traveling approximately 90 miles per hour. Coming out of turn 16, his sled lost stability. The runners caught an edge on the ice. The sled began to wobble. Kumaritashvili tried to correct it, but at those speeds, small movements become amplified. The sled veered left toward the outer wall of the track and struck an unpadded steel support beam just beyond the outer wall of the track. The impact was violent. Medical personnel rushed to him immediately, but Kumaritashvili had sustained massive blunt force trauma to his head and torso. The head injuries caused immediate death. Marco Simoncelli, MotoGP. On October 23, 2011, Marco Simoncelli lined up on the starting grid at Sepang International Circuit in Malaysia. He was 24 years old and was known for his aggressive riding style and his wild curly hair that flowed out from under his helmet. Fans loved him. Fellow riders respected him. At the beginning of the race, everything looks calm. No incidents. The riders settled into their rhythm. Then, lap 2 began. This was when things started taking a tragic turn. The field approached turn 11, a medium-speed right-hand corner. Simoncelli was in the middle of the pack. He leaned the bike over to begin the turn. Then, his rear tire lost grip. The back of the Honda slid sideways. Simoncelli felt the slide and tried to save it, but the bike slid sideways directly across the racing line. Other riders were coming at full racing speed. There was no time to react, no time to brake, no time to swerve. Colin Edwards was directly behind. His bike struck Simoncelli's body. Valentino Rossi was also beside Edwards. His bike struck Simoncelli's helmet. Both impacts occurred at approximately 75 miles per hour. The force tore Simoncelli's helmet off his head. His body tumbled across the track. Bikes and riders slid in multiple directions. Debris scattered everywhere. Race control immediately red-flagged the race. Medical personnel ran onto the track, but Simoncelli had already sustained massive head, neck, and chest trauma. He was transported to the Circuit Medical Center. Shortly after arrival, Marco Simoncelli was pronounced dead. Marc Vivien Foe, soccer. On June 26, 2003, Cameroon faced Colombia in the FIFA Confederations Cup semifinal at Stade de Derlin in Lyon, France. The evening was warm. The stadium was full. This was an important match. The winner would advance to the final. Marc Vivien Foe played defensive midfield for Cameroon. He was 28 years old and one of Africa's best players. He had played for Manchester City in England and was on loan to Lyon. He was experienced and fit. He ran constantly during matches. The game was physical and competitive. In the 72nd minute, Foe was jogging back toward his defensive position. He was not involved in immediate play. No contact had occurred. No collision. Nothing unusual. Then suddenly he collapsed. Foe fell face first onto the grass. His body went completely limp. Players nearby immediately recognized something catastrophic had happened. They waved frantically for medical staff. Medical personnel sprinted onto the field. They found Foe unconscious and not breathing. Despite all efforts, Marc Vivien Foe was pronounced dead about 45 minutes after collapsing. The cause was hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a heart condition where the heart muscle thickens abnormally. Owen Hart, WWE. On May 23, 1999, Owen Hart prepared for his entrance at the WWE Over the Edge pay-per-view event in Kansas City. He was 34 years old and performing as the Blue Blazer, a superhero parody character. The entrance involved being lowered from the arena rafters on a cable. Hart was harnessed and lifted 78 feet above the ring. The mechanism used a quick-release system designed to allow him to dramatically drop the final few feet when near the ring. While hanging high above the crowd, the quick release was triggered accidentally. Hart plummeted 78 feet. He struck the top rope and flipped into the ring. The impact caused massive internal injuries. Medical personnel in the arena rushed to help. Despite emergency surgery, he was transported to Truman Medical Center, where he was pronounced dead from internal injuries and organ damage. Dale Earnhardt, NASCAR. On February 18, 2001, Dale Earnhardt drove his black No. 3 Chevrolet around Daytona International Speedway. The Daytona 500 was on its final lap. The biggest race of the NASCAR season was coming to a dramatic finish. Earnhardt was 49 years old and a 7-time NASCAR champion. He was known as the Intimidator for his aggressive driving style. He was a legend. His son Dale Earnhardt Jr. and teammate Michael Waltrip were running first and second. Earnhardt was running third, but he was not trying to win. He was blocking other cars behind him to protect his teammates. Suddenly, Sterling Marlin's car came up behind Earnhardt in turn 4. Contact was made. At that point, Earnhardt's car got loose. The rear end slid sideways. He tried to correct the slide, but before he could, Ken Schrader's car also made contact. The combined impacts sent Earnhardt's car shooting toward the outside wall. He was traveling approximately 155 miles per hour. The car hit the concrete barrier head-on. The sudden deceleration caused a basilar skull fracture. The base of Earnhardt's skull separated from his spine. The injury was instantly fatal. Safety crews reached the car quickly, but Earnhardt was unresponsive. He was extracted and transported to Halifax Medical Center in Daytona Beach. Dale Earnhardt was pronounced dead at the hospital at 5:16 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The 1955 Le Mans disaster. Motorsport. On June 11, 1955, over 250,000 spectators gathered at Circuit de la Sarthe in France for the 24 Hours of Le Mans endurance race. It was Saturday afternoon. Pierre Levay drove his Mercedes-Benz 3-motored SLR down the main straight at over 120 miles per hour. The race started at 4 p.m. Mike Hawthorne in a Jaguar was leading. He approached the pit lane entrance at high speed. His team was ready for a scheduled stop. Hawthorne suddenly braked hard to turn into the pits. Lance Macklin in his Austin Healey was directly behind. Macklin swerved left to avoid Hawthorne, moving directly into Levy's path. Levy had no time to react. His Mercedes struck the rear of Macklin's car. The impact launched it into the air like a ramp. The car flew almost 330 feet toward the spectator area. It struck the earthen embankment in front of the crowd. On impact, the car disintegrated. The Mercedes was constructed with a magnesium alloy body. Magnesium burns at extremely high temperatures. Suddenly, the car exploded into flames. Pierre Levay was killed instantly in the initial impact. His body was thrown from the car. The spectator area became a scene of horror. Bodies lay everywhere. The screaming was continuous. Burning wreckage ignited clothing. People ran in panic. The magnesium fire could not be extinguished with water. It burned hotter when water touched it. Medical personnel worked frantically. Bodies were carried away. The injured were loaded into any available vehicles. Final casualty counts reached at least 82 dead and over 120 injured. It remains the deadliest accident in motorsport history. If you'd like to see more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and feel free to drop suggestions for the next video in the comments.